Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of About Abroad, where it's my job to introduce you to people who have built amazing lives for themselves in various foreign corners of the globe. We're talking with expats and thought leaders about moving abroad, remote work, visas, and all the fun and practical knowledge that you need to know to follow in their footsteps. If you've ever dreamed of making a life for yourself overseas, maybe working remotely or embracing long-term travel, retiring or studying abroad, or even just taking a peek inside life beyond your borders, you've landed in the right place. My guest today is my new friend Cepee, who joins me from the beautiful Costa del Sol in the south of Spain. And we spent the next hour jamming out on all things Spain, a country that I've been living in for the past 5 years, and she has a 20-year love affair with. So we dove into all the different ways that people can also come live in Spain, the ones that at least came to our mind during this conversation, and talked about some of our favorite places throughout the country. Cepee is a leader in the space of helping people, particularly women, and particularly women over the age of 30 who want to build a life abroad for themselves. We spent a lot of this time talking about Spain, of course, but a lot of what she mentions can apply to countries across the world. So she's a published author, she's a business owner in this space, and a leader of an upcoming boot camp, which also will help you build a life abroad. So naturally, we had tons to talk about in this conversation, and it was a lot of fun. She brought the energy and tons of practical information. So I think you all will enjoy it. Please help me in welcoming Cepee to About Abroad. I'm so excited about for this conversation is that you're in the place, the Costa del Sol down there in the south of Spain, which is where I started my Spanish journey. And I don't talk about that much, actually.
Oh, I definitely did not know that. I'd love to hear what your link is to here. Yeah, I'm in Malaga. I'd love to hear where you were and what you were doing here.
Well, I wish I would have landed in Malaga. To be honest, I didn't know much about Spain at the time. And I came over and actually, I don't want to bore you with all the details. Kind of made a rash decision to fly from Ecuador to Spain. I think it was in 2015. And I just finished up 6 months in Latin America and was like, I'm going to go to Spain randomly. And through a confluence of events, ended up renting a little apartment in La Cala de Mijas. Do you know La Cala?
Yeah. I haven't been there, but I know where it is. Yeah.
Okay. So it's a cute little town, but I was planning to go there and thinking, oh, we're gonna study some Spanish, learn some Spanish. I'd learned a little bit in Ecuador and was like, I'm gonna learn some Spanish, and La Cala de Mijas is like Little Britain. There was no Spanish people there. Everybody was from the UK or Ireland, and I spent 3 months not speaking a word of Spanish. So anyway, Malaga's awesome though. It's a gem. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too. And it is, here along the coast, there are those little enclaves of people who just speak, foreigners who speak their language. There's, the Finnish population, definitely a lot of Brits, Germans, Dutch. So it can be hard sometimes to speak Spanish here. But I think Malaga, the capital city itself, is a great mix of internationals and locals. So you definitely have that Spanish vibe.
Yeah. And it's a good size too. I feel I think it's the 5th or 6th biggest city in Spain, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know where exactly it falls, but I think we're at 600,000. So it is a good size. Before this, I lived in Madrid for 5 years. I'm from Houston, Texas, which is a big city. So I'm a big city girl, and I never really envisioned living in Malaga. It felt a little bit too small. But actually, it's been okay. And like I said, I like that mix of international and local. So it's good.
Yeah, that would be. I kind of am drawn to these mid-sized cities. So for example, when I'm in a place like Houston or Madrid, I'm I like this as a vacation or as a long weekend or something, but I generally kind of like the mid-sized places. And that's how I kind of went to the Costa del Sol, explored some of those areas, ended up later in Valencia, which was that perfect size for me. It's 1 million people. It's I think it's the 3rd largest city in Spain. And so not Barcelona, not Madrid. And I tell people, I don't know if you feel this way about Malaga, but for me, Valencia is a much better city to live in than it is to visit. I wouldn't recommend someone coming to Europe be oh, you have to put Valencia on your list. But for living, it's awesome quality of life and good mix of having enough stuff to do, the authentic Spanish vibe, but also some internationals and things like that.
Definitely. Yeah. Actually, I had a friend who came with her partner from the US to Spain, and she was trying to pick my brain. And she had Malaga on the list with other cities, Madrid, Sevilla, Granada, Cordoba. I'm like, go to all of those, skip Malaga City. And, Malaga City itself, I would agree, isn't maybe the most interesting place to visit or the most beautiful. There's so many more beautiful places, but the surroundings here, within 20, 30 minutes, an hour, I can be in some of the most beautiful places in the world that people, come to on their honeymoon. So I agree. And to live here, to have access to all that beauty is really like a privilege.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I mean, I think people know the Costa del Sol, like, you're talking about like some of one of the most popular areas of beaches in the world. As you say, what a lot of people don't know, and I certainly didn't before, was that like you head north into like, into like towards like Granada, and you're talking about like incredible mountains where you can go skiing, and like you can be up there like on the ski lifts looking backwards and see Africa over on the other side of the Mediterranean. Like that's an insane thing. And I don't think people think about that when they think about Spain or the Costa del Sol.
No, because they're just thinking, yeah, sunshine and beaches, but definitely there are mountain ranges and, yeah, like you said, snow and skiing that are really close to where people can go swimming. It's kind of cool.
It is. I heard somebody tell me when I first got there, they were like, yeah, one day I went snowboarding and then, or no, I went swimming in the morning and then I was snowboarding in the afternoon. And I was just like, I don't think this when they think of Spain, but I'm glad, you and I have had some time to settle into this amazing country. And I mean, that's like the coolest thing to me about Spain is the diversity. And again, I don't think it's what people think of, but like the natural beauty and the different languages and the different cultures, the history, it's all like very diverse. And I believe a lot of us just have this like stereotypical mindset around a lot of countries in the world, and we forget like the nuance that's in there, which is really the beauty of what makes it an amazing place to live.
Definitely. I mean, there's just so much to see and do within, and I'm from Texas, so I'm going to make the reference in a country that is, I think, smaller than my state. So, like you said, there's just so much diversity in culture, in history, in food, and languages. And a lot of that is just like living and alive. You can see that if you go to Catalunya, you're going to hear a different language in Galicia, in the Basque Country to some extent. So it's really fascinating that you could spend so much time just within Spain and never really get bored and always be surprised.
How long have you been there now? Exactly. You're from Houston, but I don't know if there were other stops along the way. What was Cepee's path to Malaga and the Costa del Sol?
Right. So I've had a very long love affair with Spain. So I'm going to age myself here, but in my community and the work I do, I talk about my age a lot. So I'm 42, but I originally came to Spain when I was 21. So 2001 to study Spanish in Madrid. And so I had a love affair with Madrid and with Spain and kind of bounced back and forth a lot of my 20s. I did a master's in Madrid in 2010, but in 2015 is when I moved here to Spain, and I've been here for 7 years since then. And like I said, majority of that was in Madrid. So Malaga is kind of new in my story here. Never really envisioned myself living here. But since I've been here on and off for about 20 years, I feel like, I have a good feel for the country and been able to see a lot and also see the country change a bit too over the decades.
Yeah. What's changed a lot? You think what stands out to you? 20 years is a good bit of, you have a nice, data set to work with there, more than most.
Right. Yeah. I would say my focus would be the Madrid, because that's the place where I feel like I had a pulse on and got to see it, evolve over the decades. Really, Madrid, I feel like when I first went there, felt very Spanish, and it still does. But, being a vegetarian, I felt the limitations of the culture there. And I would say probably after the crisis in, what was that, 2008, I feel like, a lot of Spaniards maybe left the country to look for work. And when I moved back here in 2015, I felt that shift it just felt more international. There were, it felt like there were just more people from all over the world. There were much, different types of foods that you could tap into. The culture just seemed a little more international in Madrid for me than it was before. So kind of like opening up and meeting a lot of people who had experiences of living abroad and having experiences outside of Spain. So I think for me, that was a change that I saw over the year.
I noticed, I don't have the amount of time that you've had here by any means, but I have also noticed that in Valencia, just being there for the past 5 years. And the first couple times I came to Spain, I also remember feeling like it was fun for a short period of time. It was very traditional. And I was spending time in Andalusia and like that area, and feeling like I really enjoyed the authenticity of like you were in some place, like you were really forced to speak Spanish, or you were really like immersed in the kind of like stereotypical like paella culture or flamenco culture or something. Like there was just some real authenticity to that. But with that authenticity became some traditionalness, which meant, you mentioned being a vegetarian, for example, like just going to a place and be like, do you have anything vegetarian? Like, we got pimientos padrones and that's about it, bro. And like, you're like, okay. Like there are no other options. Or like, there was some stuff like I remember like related to like having a dog and the way dogs were perceived. And so I don't know. Anyway, it is kind of interesting. Like I've seen that change quite a bit. Valencia to me, even just in being there 5 years, like year 1 to year 5, and the explosion of remote work and digital nomads and things like that. I mean, I think have really, really changed it, and mostly in good ways, I think. And I could understand if somebody tried to argue a little bit, towards maybe some of that authenticity being lost. But that's why it's fun to seek out places where they're not completely overrun by tourists and such as well.
Yeah, like I think like a Barcelona is to an extent, it did have the over tourism there. And I think that helped in a way. People seek other places within Spain. So Valencia, Malaga, kind of, and Madrid also making its place on the map of places that maybe weren't first choices for people. People got to experience that because they still hold on to a lot of their authenticity, like you mentioned, but also, growing internationally as well.
Yeah, totally. So what brought you, like you mentioned the love affair, but I mean, like you don't have, as far as I know, you don't have like a European passport or Spanish passport at first. So like you had to come for some reason, and or you were able to stay for some reason. That's what I'm more interested in. So maybe let's dive into that aspect.
Yeah. So I'm going to say it was not for love. People assume that. Nothing wrong with that, but that wasn't my story. When I came many moons ago, I came to study Spanish. I actually started traveling internationally quite young. So at 17, I did the Netherlands. The next year, I would like do a different country every year. And Spain came up on the list to try out. Loved it. Wanted to move here. Couldn't figure out a way to move here that wasn't teaching English. But just kind of tried and failed over many times. And I think what really just the allure to Spain was the culture. As you know, it's a very vibrant, warm, energetic culture. There's an energy in the air. And I'm going to refer to Madrid because that's where I had a lot of my experiences. And I just loved it. There was something about it that was just hypnotizing. And for me, really felt like my place in the world. I don't know if you have had that feeling, or listeners out there. Sometimes you just travel to places and it just feels like, I don't know, there's something that's pulling you towards there. So I really had that with Spain. And I just like the way they approached life. It was just, you really living life as a priority, right? It isn't all about work. And so I had been to many places, but nothing felt like Spain. So just chasing that dream of wanting to move here took forever to figure out all the pieces. And like I said, went back and forth. I, have taught English here in the auxiliar program, which happy to talk about if you're interested. And I also, like I mentioned, did a master's here. Neither of those led to like long-term living. But I would say in 2015, when I was living in Texas, I had a good life. And I like to say, though, that my good life felt like it was getting in the way of a great life. And I had in the back of my head just still that dream of wanting to live in Spain. And I was 35 and thought kind of like, if now, not when. Let's give it one more go. Let's just see what it's like to try to make it work on our terms again and see what happens. And I'm so happy I did that, because now that's led to 7 years of being here.
So I can relate to so much of what you just said. And I love the good life getting in the way of a great life. That totally resonates with me. And I think with a lot of people considering making this change. You touched on a couple things there that I think are really interesting that I learned about being in Spain. I think would be awesome to share with the audience. So one is the auxiliary program, and one is like the education bit. How both of those at least gave you short-term, longer stints in Europe and in Spain in particular. So would you touch on those for us?
Definitely, yeah. So for specifically for U.S. citizens, but this is also open to other nationalities. If you want to move to Spain, I think the easiest way to get your foot in the door is through a teaching assistant program. The teaching assistants are called auxiliaries. That's the Spanish word for assistant. And there's a few programs out there. I came on the one that's through the Ministry of Education. And I say it's a great way to get your foot in the door because it gives you, basically, you get the visa, you get a monthly stipend, which is anywhere from 700 to 1,000 euros, which I know isn't a lot. Talk about that. And it gives you healthcare as well. And you're only working 12 to 16 hours a week. So it's a pretty good deal if you have some savings or a way to supplement your income and you just want to be in Spain. It is not a long-term solution to living here. Some people have made it, have been able to stay on it for so long, but I think it really limits you, especially financially. I don't see it as a long-term way, But for me, it was fabulous. I did it when I was 26 and I did it again when I was 35. So when I moved here in 2015, as much as I didn't want to teach English and I didn't want to do the program again because it felt like a step backwards because I'd already done it when I was much younger, I knew like it would get me here and I could figure out what was next. So that's the auxiliary program.
Yeah, that one step back, two steps forward thing is prevalent throughout people's move abroad. I think you have to humble yourself a little bit often and take a little bit of a leap of faith and figure out the next steps once you get there. And it could be a nice little path to making that happen. I think one of the important things to mention with that is that you don't always get to pick exactly where you're going to be. And I don't remember the details, but I know that can be a bit of a frustrating point for some people. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I'm going to poke some holes in this program because it is by no means a perfect program. Well, all those perks might sound awesome. So you don't really get to pick exactly where you are. You can, put a preference to the region you want to go to. But, for instance, if you choose, Madrid, doesn't mean you're going to be in the center of the city. You could be in, one of the neighboring cities in Madrid, which means you may have a long commute and it may not be so convenient. So you may spend a lot of time commuting. And also, as I mentioned, the program, you're only required to work 12 to 16 hours a week. That doesn't mean you're going to have block hours. So that doesn't mean you're just going to go in from 9 to 3 a few days a week. Actually, your classes may not be back to back. So you may be spending even more time, let's say at the school, than your working hours. So those are just things to keep in mind. And I would say the third thing, because these come up for people who are interested in the program and people who have done it, is sometimes, you are a language assistant, but often, or let me say sometimes, schools and teachers can take advantage of the auxiliares, especially since a lot of times the people who are doing these programs are kind of straight out of college, right? You're talking about people in their early 20s, although there are a lot of people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s in the program. But you may be taking on more responsibility than you're supposed to. So definitely it is a program that has some flaws, but I still recommend it to people who want to just get here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's a great foot in the door, and I met a lot of people who were doing it and loved it. I mean, there were a lot of people just really enjoyed it because you're not working 40 hours a week. And you mentioned it's not a ton of money, but it's also, especially depending on where you live, you can, depending on how you go about it, you can get by with perhaps a little bit of savings or a little bit of supplemental income and that amount of money coming in. I mean, I know plenty of people that were doing that, a few roommates or a roommate or something, and they were living a good life.
Definitely. I mean, it's almost in a way, Kim, you can see it as your sabbatical, especially for people who've been in the workforce for a long time and just don't know what they want to do next, but need a break. I think it's a great opportunity for you to still have a purpose. You still have a little bit of work and a little bit of income, but it gives you a lot of freedom to, figure out what you want to do. Once when I did the program, I only worked 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, had Monday, Fridays off. Usually you get 1 day a week off during the work week. So it is just a great, I think, schedule for people who just want to slow things down a bit and figure out what's next.
Awesome. Thank you. And then the education path, I think, is another one. Something I never knew until actually living in Spain was that, and meeting people that were doing this, was that they could come over and study Spanish or study at a local university or something and get a 1-year visa that was often extendable. And that was their kind of foot in the door to a longer term visa. So I don't know if that defines, the path that you took, but I think that's an interesting point. And perhaps you can expound upon how education allowed you to stay for a little bit longer as well.
Yes. So that is great. I love that you asked about this. This is another in for people who, want to be in Spain, maybe want to pivot career paths, or maybe just want to do a master's, which is what I did. So I already had my undergrad from the US. I came here and did a master's. So if you do come study in Spain, you're getting that visa to be here for the duration of your studies, whether that's Chase mentioned, a language, course, you can, be here for a few months or a year, or you do a 4-year program as well. And so that buys you some time. In my case, I did a master's here at a private university. So it was a bit expensive, much cheaper than that in the US, but university programs here in a public school are going to be, not so much less than what you have ever paid in the US. So that is a plus. There are some programs that are in English. A lot of things are going to be in Spanish. My program was in English, and I studied international relations. So I did a master's in international relations. So it bought me some time. And I think in most places in the world, if you want to, get into the labor market, your network is going to be, your most valuable asset. So the benefit benefit of studying here in Spain, if you want to move here, is that you have time to build that network, to make connections that may open doors for you to be able to get a job. It's no guarantee. And to get a job, you're going to have a company sponsor your visa. But, if you built those relationships, you may have a better case as to why someone would want to hire you. So I think that could be an in for people who want to kind of play the long game and also have an interest in, learning something new.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that can't go, unspoken. Like that's a huge challenge for people that are coming from outside of Europe and wanting to get hired into Europe, that you need to get a company to sponsor you to do that. And to do that, often these companies have to go through a pretty vigorous process to say, like, I've interviewed other Europeans and I haven't been able to find this person. They're very unlikely to do that, to take that chance on someone that they haven't met or don't have someone close to them that will vouch for them. Like some companies will work around that and say, hey, look, yeah, we posted a job ad. We didn't get anybody. We've got Cepee here and we want her, so we're just going to bring her in. But that's very unlikely to happen without a connection in place.
Definitely. And I can actually speak to that because I was one of those lucky, rare people who got a work sponsorship as an American here, which I share the story, but I always have the asterisk, like, don't expect this to happen because it is quite rare.
You are literally the first person that I met that got that. So that says something about you. And also, yeah, people just should know that that's the rarity.
It is a rarity. So like I mentioned, I came to Spain in 2015. I came through the program of teaching English. And in my mind, I told myself, I am not going to get stuck teaching English forever to stay in Spain. I got to find a way out. So I applied everywhere, went on interviews. Of course, when they get to the point of asking you, are you legal to work here? And I'm like, no, I need sponsorship. Of course, everyone kind of closed the door in my face and said, sorry, we can't help you. And everyone around me, all the other Americans were telling me too, like, it's a waste of time that you're even applying. No one's going to hire you. No one's going to sponsor your visa. But I got really lucky. I went on one interview. And when they asked me the spiel of, do you need sponsorship? I said, yes. And they said, okay. And I kind of was like, wait a minute, did I not understand something right? Is this like a language barrier? Did they understand what I said? And luckily, I just got really lucky and they offered to sponsor my visa. I do want to say what did help me though, they hired me under a category of a highly skilled worker, or highly qualified worker. So if you do have some specialized skills, that can help you. Again, it's not easy, but what really helped my case is, I got hired by a Spanish startup to work on their marketing team, helping with the US market. So while I have a background in marketing, I was not like super specialized, but what helped me qualify for the position from a legal perspective is that I went to, this private school in Spain that is considered a prestigious school. So if you go to kind of like a school that's on the prestigious list, that helps your case of being highly qualified. And so that really helped, push my papers through and help me position myself as, someone in the market that they couldn't find to get hired for that position.
Yeah. And I guess also somebody with the knowledge of the American market who also speaks Spanish and has studied in Spain but has that native experience can actually be a benefit instead of a drawback in that case. So that's good. And that's not like totally rare. I mean, there's a lot of European companies that are targeting the US market. I know that to be true very, very, very well. So that can be an advantage. I know a bunch of people actually who work as like translators for their a Finnish translator that lives in Spain or something like that, because it's, they have a unique expertise. So to be highly qualified, some people see that and I think they're scared of it. I don't know if you've witnessed that, but people think, oh, well, I'm not highly qualified. Like your native language just may be you're highly qualified.
Exactly. I would have never considered myself highly qualified with my background, but it just depends on what the role is and what they're looking for. So definitely language skills is going to be a unique qualification, like Chase said. Of course, tech, that's like with every country, right? If you're a great software engineer, that can really open doors, but also like managerial positions, those can be something that's hard for companies to find. So, just kind of look, this is true within Spain, but a lot of countries in Europe kind of have these highly qualified routes. So it's kind of like a fast track to getting a work visa. Check and see on the country you're interested in and see what the qualifying roles are, because they usually have a list of kind of like where they have labor shortages or what roles are considered highly qualified, and see if you find your role in there.
Do you cover a lot of this stuff? I know you have like a book that's gone out, and we should definitely talk about that. It's probably a perfect opportunity to. Do you talk about this in the book? Like, do you go into deeper detail?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for bringing it up. Yes. So I actually, during the pandemic, wrote a book book. It's a visa guide to living in Europe. It's called I'm Out of Here, an American's Ultimate Visa Guide to Living in Europe. And what I did, I just, through my own experience of being able to find a way to live in Europe as an American and meeting so many Americans that were living across Europe, I just knew it was possible that there were all these visas out there that Americans didn't know about that would let them live here. So I wrote this book that goes over the 18 easiest countries to move to in Europe, because there definitely are countries that are very hard to move to and you shouldn't even consider them, like looking at you, Norway, Sweden, Finland, the UK. But there's a lot of countries out there where it is easier for an American to move to. And there's, a lot of different types of visas. And I do go into it in the book of not only just student visas, but these types of work visas that are, considered highly qualified, the different professions there, and other visas as well, kind of like retirement, non-lucrative, digital nomad. There's a lot of different ways. If you want to live in Europe, there is a path for you.
You know what's so funny about that? I'm so grateful to people like you that can have the tenacity to write a book, because I started this podcast like years and years ago, but under a different name and a similar concept, but I tried to do it as like a blog, and I wanted to dive into all this stuff. And I found out very quickly, like I suck at writing, and it takes me so much time and energy. Like it fell off very, very quickly. I'm a talker, not a writer, I guess. So anyway, hence I have a podcast now. But the root of that was I was Googling this kind of stuff, and we are talking like 7, 8, 10, like over, let's say 10 years ago, from 10 to 7 years ago. And there was no content out there about this. Like you just couldn't find answers. And I remember coming across a nomadic mat blog that was like 5 ways Americans can move to Europe or something. And it was literally like, get sponsored by a company, which we just talked about. It's like not really going to happen. Get married to a European, teach English. It was like, and then there was like one visa. I think there was some process through Germany where you could go, but you had to like fly to Germany and be in Germany and on your 90-day tourist visa, and then apply for this thing there. And in the meantime, you would have to like buy a year's worth of insurance and jump through all these hoops to like be a citizen, and not even knowing if you could be not a citizen, a resident. And like, so I just remember thinking like, this sucks. Like there's no information out there. It seems to be impossible to find a way in. And I felt like there had to be. I fortunately came across, or my wife did at least, she came across an outdated blog post that mentioned this non-lucrative visa, which was my path into Spain. And the reason we went to Spain was just because we were like, well, we want to go to Europe. Sure, learning some Spanish sounds cool. We've been there before. We like it. But literally, it was like, this is the one path into anything beyond 90 days. And at the time, that's all we knew. So that's a super long way of saying thank you for writing a book on this. And this space has come a long way.
Definitely. I mean, look how like life-changing it is to find that kind of information, right? Like you guys wouldn't have been here if you wouldn't have stumbled upon that blog post. And that's kind of how I felt the same way, 7, 10 years ago, of after trying to live in Spain and not finding a way, doing all the Google searches, and just seeing roadblocks everywhere. Once I uncovered the information and I kind of like felt like I pulled the curtain back, like, why isn't there a one place where you can go to find all your option? Why does everyone have to find out about this kind of word of mouth or meeting someone who did this thing and you can't find anyone else who has the information? So I definitely, yes, it was a struggle to write it. By no means was it easy. It took a lot of research to write this book, but I'm so glad that it's out there. And I knew that it would help a lot of people who just like, I want to live there. Tell me how I can do it. And I kind of lay out every option imaginable that you have, every viable option. So the book does really focus on options that are, available to the average person. Like you said, this isn't a book about telling you like marry a European or get transferred with your job, or you have to have a lot of money. This is for kind of like, wrote it for me, the book that I wish I could have found 7, 10 years ago to help me move here.
Yeah, we share that, like the passion for sharing that information, because once you've jumped through those hoops and you're saying the whole way through that process, like, I wish someone had written this book already so I could just read it. I wish someone would just tell me how to do this, and nobody could. And now, there is stuff available to help people do that. So I share that with you. I'm glad between initiatives like your book and this podcast and others, like we're trying to get more of that out there. So that's really awesome to hear. We'll be right back to the show after a quick break for a note from our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by my good friends over at Greenback Tax, the very best in U.S. expat tax services and the company that I've trusted to handle my tax situation since I moved abroad in 2015. Greenback is 100% focused on helping U.S. expats with their taxes, and to date, they've filed almost 50,000 returns for nearly 15,000 happy customers like me living in more than 200 different countries around the world. After 7 years working together, I can say with confidence that they make one of the most painful parts of life abroad an absolute breeze with their automated systems that store all of your information for you to make tax filing easy year after year, and the friendly advisors who you actually have a working relationship with. There are no robots over at Greenback. Best of all, everyone is a CPA or enrolled agent with a specialty in U.S. expat taxes, which means they know exactly how to help you take advantage of some incredible tax breaks because you're living abroad, not in spite of it. As of January 23rd, tax season has officially arrived, so it's time to get started. Learn more about Greenback Tax today by visiting greenbacktaxservices.com via the link in the show notes. Hey guys, if you're still around and enjoying this episode, then I think you might actually like our once a month newsletter as well. If you'd like to sign up, just open up the show notes of the episode you're currently listening to, scroll down, and look for aboutabroad.com/newsletter. It takes about 30 seconds to sign up. It's a fantastic way to support the show, and I think you'll be pleased with the information that we provide every month as well. Thanks a lot for listening. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode. I would love to know, what's your status now, I guess? Like how are you able to stay beyond just the couple years that a visa offers? And I asked that, it's sort of a loaded question because I've just gone through a new phase of my visa experience, which I can touch on too if you're interested, but it doesn't end with like getting a 1-year visa, right?
No. Yeah, no, I definitely want to hear about your situation. And before I talk about that, I just want to just praise you for this podcast. If this podcast was around 10 years ago, I mean, I would have been like, oh my God, all these people are doing the things I want to do. So it's really powerful to have a platform like this to show people an example. Because I think that's also part of the issue is that if you don't have examples of people doing the thing you want to do, it just seems like it's just impossible and a pipe dream and kind of a crazy idea. So thanks for this out.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I mean, something I've learned, and I would bet you'll agree, is limiting beliefs are one of the things that hold us back most. We have this proverbial ceiling on all of us that we think is there, and that ceiling is always way higher than we believe it to be. And so those expectations about what we think is possible that's generally what holds most of us back. And just knowing that something is potentially there can unlock tons of opportunities for people. And I know that's been the case for me. And so this whole thing is rooted in just sharing other people's stories so that we can remove those barriers and let people just live and get the good life out of the way so they can live the great life. Again, I love that
Yes,
quote.
that's what it's about. Yes. All right. So back to your question of kind of my status and how I've been able to stay. I mean, when I came, I didn't know what the story was going to be, right? I was like, I'm going to come for a year and try to figure out how to stay. Didn't really know what that meant. But I got lucky. After the year of teaching, I got hired at the Spanish startup, actually hated it. It was such a bad fit. I had a lot of anxiety and it just did not want to work there. So after 6 months, I quit that job, which was, not the best decision because quitting that job meant I'd lost that visa. So kind of I won the lottery getting a work visa sponsorship. And then I just kind of gave all that money away. Right. And so I had to that's how bad the situation was if I did that. But I had to figure out what I could do. And kind of like you, I heard about this non-lucrative visa, and that was my solution at the time. And so I had been on the non-lucrative from about 2017 until very recently when I actually got Spanish citizenship last year. So
Whoa.
I have really turned things around, and now I have my Spanish passport and I'm here. I don't have to worry about visa issues anymore.
Wow, that is an incredible. You just hit the visa trampoline and bounced up into a whole other level with the citizenship. Okay, let's do a couple things with this real quick for anybody listening. Let's do I'll do it very quickly. The non-lucrative visa is basically a visa that was built for pensioners, retirees, back in the day. And so if you had a fixed income coming from somewhere else, then you could use that to come stay in Spain for 1 to 5 years. And you were basically not taking a Spanish job, but you could be there as long as you support yourself. Still around. It's just that, and I would love to, I'm kind of saying this, asking you the question. I get the impression that they're really trying to push a lot of us that were using that visa early on to more of like the new digital nomad visa, because that non-lucrative visa has the word non-lucrative in it. Like it's not really meant for people that have an active income. And so they were just using it because it kind of fit the same criteria, but now they've built an actual digital nomad visa. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, I would say so. Especially, I mean, it's unfortunate. The non-lucrative was a visa when I applied for it in 2017. I just, while you're not allowed to participate in lucrative activities in Spain at the time, you could work remotely for companies outside of Spain. So actually, my letter of intent when I applied at the Houston consulate stated that I was working remotely for companies, located US and wherever. And as I renewed my visa over the years, that intent was still there. But in 2019, the consulates, at least in the US, the Spanish consulates, were rejecting applications of anyone who stated that they would be working remotely. And so it's kind of this gray area where a lot of people in Spain on non-lucrative are still working. And there are lawyers that will tell you you are allowed to work while you're here, but not for a Spanish company. So it is a gray area, but the consulates in the US will not approve your application again if you stay working. So now there is a solution to this problem, like Chase mentioned, is the digital nomad visa, which we had all been waiting to hear for, right? Spain was teasing it for about 2 years. And finally in December, they put it into law, and it's still a little bit gray. Like I've heard people say you can't apply for it now. People are like, you have to wait a few months. They're still hashing out the last rules and regulations. But I think at this point, you need to probably talk to a lawyer to see. In a few months, you can probably just go to the Spanish consulate website, wherever you live and find the application or the path there. But the digital nomad visa is going to be a solution for people who have a remote income and want to live in Spain. And it looks like it's anywhere from 1 to 5 years. And it seems like a pretty cool solution.
Would you recommend people talk to you about that or reach out to like a actual like lawyer?
Yeah, I would say right now, talk to a lawyer. The information I'm getting is coming from different legal websites, but they may have, a pulse on what's going on. Cause I've heard people say like my lawyer says that I can apply for it and they're applying for it for me. So they will definitely have an in the book that we just talked about, my visa guidebook. It's actually a digital book. So I update that once a year. So I will update that once I have concrete information. I feel like right now, a lot of the information out there is more hearsay. So I don't want to spread information that may not be 100% true, but talk to a lawyer now. And then in a few months, definitely reach out to me, or, the information you find online should be pretty accurate.
And I'll do everybody one step more. I'm actually in conversations with an awesome lawyer that specializes in this about possibly sponsoring About Abroad. So we need to prove to them our worth here. So contact me via aboutabroad.com contact form and say you want to be put in touch with these people, and we'll start flooding them with potential customers. So I think I totally agree with you. I'm a big fan of like outsourcing stuff you're just not good at and or just don't know enough about in this space when it comes to the legalities of visas and taxes and stuff. And like there's different levels of that. There's the stuff that's been around for a while. I think there's very talented people out there that have studied that and experienced it. I put you in that category for sure. Like they could contact you and say, hey, I want to know more about this process for coming to Spain or whatever country. But the new stuff, the stuff that's still being like the ink is still wet on this digital nomad visa, and the lawyers don't even fully know because you have lots of parties involved. So when it comes to the Spain digital nomad visa, I'm so happy you said it the way you did. Like totally agree. It's worth it to talk to a certified lawyer at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll definitely have more information, but it's a really exciting option. And soon enough, I mean, I do want to say, people always ask me like, do I need a lawyer to apply for, let's say, the non-lucrative or for whatever visa? And yes and no. Like you can do all this paperwork yourself. Right now, as we mentioned, non-lucrative, the digital nomad, probably go with a lawyer. Maybe in 6 to 12 months, you can do it yourself. You can definitely do things yourself. A lawyer is going to make things a little bit easier and less of a headache, but that does come at a cost too. So you need to weigh kind of your time, money equation there for yourself. When I did the non-lucrative, I did it myself the first time. But every time I renewed it in Spain, I used a lawyer because I'm like, I don't want to deal with this headache.
Same.
Okay.
I did the exact same process. We did it on our own. Took like 6 months of headaches, and to the credit of the consulate in DC, which this actually brings up another point. Every consulate that you work with is different, and so they made it like, although this stuff's in black and white, they interpret it in different ways. You might get one experience in DC and another experience in LA. They might tell you one thing that someone from the Chicago office said was true, and in Miami they tell you no, that's not true. So there is some nuance there, but but I had a great experience with DC office, and I had a chain email of, I don't know, 70 emails back and forth where they were responding to me in English, very clear, very responsive, very helpful. And my appointment there to do the actual visa was super fast and painless. So anyway, it depends. Everybody, it's a lottery in a lot of ways, but I had a good experience. And generally, I think you kind of expect that stuff is not going to go smoothly, and it actually did.
Yeah, totally. I'm so glad you had a good experience, because I'm in a few, Facebook groups for people moving to Spain, and I always hear about, I don't know which consulates in particular, but there are, maybe 6, 7, 8 in the US for Spain. And I hear a lot of horror stories. So it's good to hear a positive one out there.
Yeah. Got to sprinkle a little positivity in there. So circling back to you. So eventually you make this transition to being a citizen. So what did that look like?
Yeah. So this is something I heard about word of mouth. Maybe, I think in 2015, when I moved here, I was part of a running group in Madrid. And one of the people in my running group was a Spanish lawyer. And he said, and we were just talking about immigration issues. And he's like, if your mom's from Colombia, so my mother is from Colombia, my dad's from Iran, said, your mom being from Colombia, if you can get Colombian citizenship, you can apply for Spanish citizenship. And I was like, mind blown. Like, wait, what is this? What are you saying? I've never heard this before. So that is the path I took. So Spain actually has an agreement with citizens of Latin American countries, the Philippines, and if you are from Puerto Rico, if you have a citizenship from one of those countries or the territory of Puerto Rico, after living in Spain for 2 years legally, you can apply for citizenship. And that's different because as a U.S. citizen living in Spain, you have to be here 10 years legally before you can apply. So it's, just kind of like a fast track is what I call it. And so I had to go down that path, though. I was not yet a Colombian citizen. So I had to get my Colombian citizenship. And once I got that, I applied for Spanish citizenship, I think in 2020, maybe right before the pandemic. So it took a little while, but last spring, I got the email from my lawyer saying, you've been approved. And I just could not believe it. It was total shock.
It's kind of crazy when it even though you're building towards it, when it all works out, you're like, this really worked.
Right?
Didn't see this going my way.
You're so right. I just did not think, especially since I fell in love with this country, decades ago. We just thought about my 21-year-old self. If I could have told her hey, you just stick it out 2 decades.
20 years later, I crossed the finish line. That's epic. That's amazing. Well, somebody listening right now may be going, oh man, well I don't have any Latin American heritage. How is this going to work for me? Have no fear, because my situation may be pertinent to you. So a little update for you. I'll tell you, Cepee. So I just literally within the last couple weeks got approved for what's called permanent residency.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to hear all about this.
All right. So I'm pretty stoked about this because we took the hard route, which is just what we do, I guess. And there were basically 2 options after doing something like the non-lucrative visa for 5 years. You know all this, but more for the audience. After 5 years on the non-lucrative visa, I had to move to something else. And the next step is what's called permanent residency. And there's Spanish permanent residency, or the Spanish Larga or the EU Larga. So both of those paths provide you with a 5-year visa and you become a permanent resident. So you could think about it like temporary resident, permanent resident, and then citizen. So this is that phase in between where basically you're there. It's called permanent residency because you actually have it for forever. It's kind of like a driver's license. As long as you keep renewing it when you're supposed to, then you'll just keep it. But it's not citizenship, so I won't get a passport. I won't be able to vote, things like that. But for all intents and purposes, it serves my needs. So I'm excited. But we had those 2 options, Spanish Larga or EU Larga. And the EU Larga opens you up to being able to live in any European Union country. The Spanish Larga, just like anybody else living in Spain, you could live in Spain, but you could travel anywhere, but you couldn't go open up a bank account in France or, sign contracts in the Netherlands, something like that. So this was the big difference. And we kind of wanted that flexibility, but it was a bit more of a process to do the EU Larga. With the Spanish Larga, it was basically just apply and you'll get it. I mean, there's no question marks here. With the EU Larga, it was we're going to do some more digging on you and it's a bit more of a process. So we hired a lawyer and we went through that. And a couple weeks ago, we got granted that. So I have permanent European residency now.
I hope you celebrated because that is pretty life-changing. That's pretty big. That's big leagues there.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know if it's on citizenship level, but I'm trying to be Cepee,
Well, the good thing is we basically have the same rights. I mean, I can vote. I think that's like the main difference, but you can, pick up and go move to, you can go move to Germany and do whatever there. Like, that's just so cool that you have opened up your world to like now all the 27 member states to where you can live and work and be and all of that.
Yeah, it was like a total same as you were just describing. It was like when it actually came through, you're like, wait, what? Like it really worked? And I like kind of couldn't believe it. And I also had that flashback moment like, man, I remember when I like first came to Europe and just fell in love with like traveling around. I mean, not even just Europe, just traveling in general and being able to just that freedom to pass from one country to another and then, being here for a longer period of time and realizing like, God, I would love to experience some of these other places in the same way that I've got to experience Spain, but I don't know that I ever will. And just these like stepping stones that to get to this point is pretty awesome. And it is fun to reflect on.
Yes, amazing. And it is, I don't know. I mean, we're both immigrants over here. And, I think it gives you a lot of empathy and appreciation for what immigrants have to go to, especially in the US. Like it is a long process to get to a place where you can, stay somewhere, make a home abroad. There's so much bureaucracy that you have to go through, not to mention like the language learning. And there's just a lot of roadblocks that you have to figure out how to overcome. And a lot of it you're navigating on your own. You don't really have like a community here or like your family. And so props to you for sticking out the long game because it's pretty easy to give up when you just hit too many roadblocks and you're like, I just don't want to go through this.
That word empathy really resonates because I have so much empathy for people. Like I think about it, I'm fairly tech savvy. I'm not the most tech savvy in the world, but like, I can navigate the internet decently and I have the means to hire a lawyer and to do Zoom calls with that person when needed. And I happen to speak the local language and now, at least decently enough to like have these kind of conversations. And also English is my second language, which is many people's second language. So like that opens up a lot of ease and doors. And I have a job, where work money coming in from another place. And like so many people don't have any or all of those things. And they're immigrants in a country that are like really struggling to navigate those waters. And it's very challenging. Like whenever I'm somewhere else now and I see people going through that, I'm like, God, you are a super strong person because it is not simple. And so props to those people.
Yeah, props to those people. Amazing. I have a quick question because, healthcare is such an incredible thing here in Europe. I love it. I'm actually on the private plan, so I don't have access to the Spanish. Well, actually, now I do. Now that I'm a citizen, I have to figure that out now. I can get on the public plan. But I wanted to see, because you're now like an EU resident, like how does that work with healthcare when you go to different countries?
Yeah, great question. And also, as you mentioned, the healthcare is like a reason why it would be really hard to ever leave, because it is just insane. Like not just the lower cost, like talking 10% of the cost, but also just the quality, amazing, the ease of use, the technology around it, like the sense of calm that it gives you, like just knowing this isn't something you're not going to get hit with some 5-figure bill ever. Like that's just not a thing. So like if you get sick and you hurt something, you just go get it fixed. It's the way it should be. And for, pennies compared to what you're used to paying if you're coming from the US. So all of that, I have a private plan also. I'm also not using the public system and and it's a pan-European plan. And actually it also covers me for some basic stuff in other countries, for instance, when I'm back in the US. So I can take it and use it anywhere. The caveat is you're not supposed to be like living, like if I move to another country, then I'll have to like change the primary location, and that will adjust the deal. Perhaps even, it'll perhaps even like kick me out of the plan and I'd have to start somewhere new, which would be a little bit of a pain. But it works like while I'm traveling around Europe or living in a different place for up to X number of months. I don't know off the top of my head. It's useful.
Amazing. Yeah, it's just such a peace of mind we have here, and with the incredible healthcare that they have in Spain. I love it. I go to the doctor, I feel like all the time. I did not go a lot in the US just because it was such a headache, and even just to make an appointment, and then all the surprise costs that came up after you went in. And yeah, it was just such a mystery, and like fighting with, the people about what they charged you. It was just too much, too stressful. And you don't have to deal with any of that here.
I always think like, I'm like, is there something like, there's got to be like a copay, right? Or like a deductible or co-insurance. Like people from European countries are like, what are you talking about? Like, you mean that, like I'm going to get this MRI, but you're going to hit me with like a $700 bill or €700 bill, right? And they're like, no, you just get the MRI and move on.
Right. Where's the catch? Where's the catch?
I always think, I'm like, there's got to be a catch, and there isn't.
I had one Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Because I had one once. I had to pay like a little extra for something I did a few months ago. And they were like, your insurance isn't going to cover this. It's going to be 60 euros. I'm like, okay, I can do that.
I can swing. Yeah. I had the exact same thing happen. I had to like redo like a blood test or something, and I think it was 20 euros, and they were really sorry about it. Like they're like we have some terrible news. I'm like, oh, I'm dying, and they're like, no, you owe 20 euros. Like, all right, I'll be okay. So yeah, that's one more notch in the Spanish belt, I feel like. Is there anywhere else you would live in Spain that you've traveled to?
In Spain, I don't know. I mean, I definitely love Madrid, so I would definitely go back there at some point. I've never lived in Barcelona, and I don't know that I would want to, but it kind of, I've visited a lot. It kind of has the things that I like. It's, very international. I feel like, decent weather there, good energy, but I don't know. I don't know that I would move anywhere else. I think there aren't so many cities that are going to be the size that I want, and maybe have the same mix of tradition and international vibes. Maybe Valencia, but I don't know why something about Valencia doesn't pull me there. I don't know what it is.
I get it. Yeah, it's weird. I totally felt the same way. For instance, just showed up in Valencia thinking I'd just be there for a month, maybe 3 at the most, and something about it hooked me. I kind of can't even say what, but yeah, I get that. I mean, it's weird how different places just strike you in a different way. And I think with a lot of these places, for anybody considering moving abroad, like it's worth it to give yourself some real time to get past like the nostalgia of just being in a place for a week or even like a month, and really settle in there, because I think it can be fool's gold sometimes. Like you think you just really, really love it, and then realize, oh, for living, this isn't really for me for whatever reason.
Yes, I agree. I think that's why I tell people to do scouting trips too. I know there's a lot of Americans moving to Spain or who want to. Definitely, if you have a remote job or maybe you're retired, like come for, you can be here 90 days without a visa. Maybe come as much as you can and stay as long as you can to feel it out in the place that maybe you think you want to move to. If you haven't visited yet, I think that gives you a good feel for what life could be like living there.
Yeah. Is that, do you do some of that coaching as part of She Hit Refresh? Like, is that one of the modules or one of the things you touch on?
Yeah. So I'm just going to touch on She Hit Refresh real quick for anyone who isn't familiar.
Should give people some context there. Sorry.
Context. No, it's okay. So She Hit Refresh is my company, but also an online community for women who are aged 30 and over who want to move abroad. So we have like 10,000 women in this community. It's incredible. And there's a lot of resources out there. I do one-on-one coaching, but that isn't kind of my main thing. But I'm actually, because these questions always come up, people asking, like, how can I move abroad? Where do I start? I don't know what to do. I'm actually creating a move abroad boot camp that I'm launching late March, early April of this year. So that will definitely talk about things like the scouting trip, healthcare, what to do with my phone, all the things that people, wonder about and aren't really sure what boxes they need to tick before they kind of close up shop on their life in the US and make that leap abroad.
That's awesome. God, again, I wish this stuff was around.
Me too.
I'm so cool that it is. So how does the boot camp work? Like, what are the building blocks of the boot camp generally? Like how long does it last and when is it starting and stuff like that?
Yeah. So I'm actually building it now, getting a lot of feedback from my community on this, but it will launch. I think it's going to be March 31st, and it's going to be a 4-day boot camp. And we're going to talk about everything from kind of like, imagining the life that you want to have abroad, because there's many different ways to do it. Not everybody wants to just move to Spain, right? Some people want to be digital nomads, move around. I know a lot of people who kind of do half and half, spend like half of the year in the US, half year in Spain, especially to avoid taxes in Spain, that's a option. So there's different options of like how you want to live, but also understanding the visa component, because you've got to be practical. If you want to move abroad, we've already talked about it. You need a visa to do that. How are you going to sustain yourself? So like, do you have a job? Do you have a remote job? Can you bring that abroad? Do you need to get work abroad? So talking about very like those really practical issues and tasks that you need to figure out to actually be able to move abroad. So talking about that, and then kind of some of the other boxes that I mentioned, as well as like what to do with your home and your stuff, and taxes and moving with pets, all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, I know I'm a dude, so I'm not allowed to hang out with the girls in the community. But if there was anything that I could offer in those areas, I would be happy to share, or perhaps my wife can share based on our experiences. The dog thing connected with me. I said, yeah, that's moving abroad with a Siberian Husky is fun. So
Oh my gosh, you guys did that? Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
but actually, you'd love this because we moved. I said this before sometime, but like he's crisscrossed the equator and the Atlantic like a total of like 5 times, like up and down, north and south, east and west, and so he's got a Spanish passport. So I also joke that he's more Spanish than I am. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get on Coda's level in that regard. But anyway, it's a real challenge. And especially with the little dogs are one thing, or little animals, big dogs are a whole nother thing. And so there's a lot to dive into there, but so cool. Boot camp and the whole community. Actually on the fact that you focus on, I think you said women over 30, is that correct in particular? Yeah, I think that's really awesome. And there's a few reasons why I think that, but I would love to hear from you, like why that demographic, because I believe there's some power in that.
Yeah, thanks for asking. And I get this question a lot, like why over 30? Why not, co-ed kind of thing? In my case, when I moved, I was 35 and I just had a lot of women in my network that asked me about it and that weren't finding information, asking me like, was I scared? Did I think I was too old? How I did it. And just looking out there, I just saw there was a lot of things for like gap years, women taking gap years, but that was really geared towards women straight out of college, 21, 22. And then there was a lot of stuff for like solo female travel in your 30s and 40s, but that was more like taking a 2-week solo vacation in Thailand, by yourself, backpacking kind of thing. There wasn't anything for women of a certain age. And I say certain age because, we've had not only life experience, but we have certain responsibilities that are different and societal pressures and expectations that are different than someone who's 21, right? And, just starting kind of their life. And I just noticed that there wasn't anyone talking to this demographic and I was getting a lot of questions. And so I really was not a business idea at all. I just started a Facebook group and added the people who were asking me questions, added the people I was meeting in Spain who are amazing that were doing the thing that I was doing, and would kind of put them together to answer questions and help each other. And within a year, we had 4,000 women all over the world just through word of mouth. And I thought, okay, there's something here. There's something here.
Wow, super cool origin story. I totally agree, and I meet a lot of people, not just women, but I will say predominantly it does seem like a lot of women when I really think about it. That when I'm talking specifically about being abroad, that do struggle with a lot of the things that you're mentioning there, and so I do think it's actually like it makes a ton of sense to focus on this space. A lot of people in their mid 30s are weird. When you're trying to do things, there's a lot of expectations around where you should be in life, career wise, family wise, financially. And picking up and moving to another country might not seem like it's checking those boxes, and societally there's a lot that goes on there. So I just think that it's worth pointing that out. If that resonates with you, if you're feeling that way, perhaps you have this giant community out there of like-minded people who can help share some wisdom and give some support, and so I would encourage joining that and hearing from them.
Thank you so much. Yes, we'd love to have you. I mean, we talk about the things that I think conversations maybe aren't taking place in other places. Everything from, like choosing to be child free, that can be seen as weird in societies where kind of, a woman's is fulfilled when she's married and has kids. And some people are rejecting that, or even just talking about dating abroad, to also dealing with aging parents and the responsibility that a lot of times that falls on children's shoulders. But a lot of time, out of the siblings, a lot of women pick up that slack. So we talk about all kinds of things there within the breadth of like wanting to move abroad, but also talking about the challenges that we might be facing that we can understand, from each other as women.
Epic. I love it. This has been amazing. I would love to continue talking. I feel like we probably have a lot more that we could dive into, but we covered so much, and I feel like a lot of like really interesting, useful information for people. So thank you for imparting that wisdom on us and sharing your experiences. I would love to also ask you to mention any of the links that, if there's any particular place where people can go to learn more about the boot camp, about She Hit Refresh, about the book, and anything else you want. We'll put all this in the show notes as well. But while people are listening, let's let them know where they can go to learn more.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much, Chase. This has been an incredible experience. You're a very skilled podcaster, so thank you for having me on. And I hope, since we both live in Spain, that our paths will cross. Would love to meet you and your wife in Valencia or here in Malaga or wherever in Spain.
That sounds amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. For the listeners out there, if you want more information, I have a ton of especially free resources out there. So you can go to my website, hit refresh, and you'll find a lot of articles on there. We have a YouTube channel, Instagram, TikTok, all at hit refresh. You'll find information if you're interested on the Visa Guide to Living in Europe book. That's on the homepage of the website. And then the boot camp, since it's in the works, it is not out yet, but if you take a look in March, you'll find it on the website as well.
Very cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. I should say muchas gracias. And yeah, let's catch up in person for some tapas or paella or whatever. And I'm missing that Spanish soul, that sun right now. So I need to make it back to España as we speak. This is great. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Have a good one, Chase.
Thanks for tuning in today from wherever you are in the world. Once again, I'm Chase, and this has been another episode of About Abroad. For those of you wondering how you can best support the show, I have made it super simple for you. Just go over to the show notes of the episode that you just finished listening to and click on one of the two following links. aboutabroad.com/newsletter to get our monthly newsletter, no spam, guaranteed, or ratethispodcast.com/aboutabroad, where you can quickly and easily leave a review for the show. It's not just important to me, it also helps more wanderers just like you find us. Finally, don't forget to subscribe on your podcast platform of choice, and we will see you again next week. Thanks again. Hasta luego, amigos.